Episode 27, the Mike Trout episode, Joe, here in
There
the
you
month
go.
of December. We got the great Sherree Burruss on from CBS Sports, somebody that you used to work with, and I'm
Yep.
sure it was great catching up with her.
Feels like forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago. I interned
Yeah.
there with her at NBC4 in DC 3 years ago now, I think.
Somebody
3
tweeted
years
out
ago?
today that Eminem performing "Lose Yourself" at the Grammys was in January of this year, and that was
That's
like,
crazy.
whoa.
I mean, there's so many of those like what the heck moments like in sports and in the world that like happened this year. Like um, Australia was on fire this year. Brexit happened this year. Sports wise, RIP, Kobe died this year.
Yeah.
Like all these things they happened. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl this year. Like that feels like forever ago. But
Does.
hey, the calendar says December. We're almost out of this godforsaken
I was going to
year.
say, each day that goes by is a day closer to 2021.
Mm-hmm.
We have Sherree Burruss on coming up in a little bit, talk a lot of football with her. But, Joe, we'll talk some football of ourselves. It was a crazy week 12, the longest week of football that the NFL has ever had.
It's the longest week. It's going to go down as the craziest week. Tarico kept saying that during the broadcast yesterday. Started 12:30 on Thanksgiving, ended mid-evening on Wednesday the following week, and it's going to make for an interesting week 13 as well because we're going to have a Monday doubleheader because the Steelers game got pushed to Monday, and then there's the Ravens Cowboys that was supposed to be today. I'm losing track of the day. It's supposed to be today. That's going to be Tuesday, and it's just a whole mess, and it's going to be another long week next week. But hey, someone said it best on Twitter. I think it was our old colleague from NBC Sports Washington, Troy. You put a game on any day of the week, I'm watching it. So
100%.
The silver lining for fans is we get 2 games now on Monday. We still get a Tuesday game next week. I'm not complaining.
Look, Wednesday afternoon football, when your team is playing especially, it was quite enjoyable. I had no expectations for that Ravens game yesterday. I thought they could keep it close just because it's Ravens-Steelers.
Yeah, and
I had a feeling the defense would play well.
They really, by the skin of their teeth, kept that close. Credit to them for doing so. But, I mean, I don't know what the Steelers' play calling and execution was in the red zone. They just as easily could have won that game by 3 touchdowns, as easily as they could have lost it if they would have scored a touchdown into the half the Ravens. But it was Wednesday, 5 p.m. As you see anybody viewing on YouTube, my backdrop is different once again. While PJ's remains the same, I've now been at home in Jersey, at my apartment in Florida, and now I'm at my girlfriend's apartment in Reston, Virginia, where I'm kind of spending most of the winter. A little festive here with the Christmas tree. But I was sitting here. We made a pot of chili in the crock pot. So it was 5 o'clock. I was sitting there with a bowl of chili, a beer in the other hand, and Ravens Steelers on the TV on a Wednesday at 5 p.m. That was peak hump day. That was great.
It's quality. And then we got some great college basketball at night. We'll talk about college a little later on in the pod. But yeah, look, the Steelers remain unbeaten. They're 11-0. They got the toughest game of their season, not this week, but the following week when they have to travel to Buffalo for Sunday night. That'll be a good one. The Ravens right now out of the playoff hunt, but we've talked about it. The remaining of their schedule really outside of at Cleveland on Monday night, even though I think the Dallas game could be tricky this week.
We'll talk about it more as we get to best bets and stuff, but Dallas game could be tricky. Andy Dalton always plays them tough.
Always plays them well. The Cowboys obviously have had all that rest since they played on Thanksgiving. And I just, the Cowboys obviously still have a lot to play for. The Washington football team scheduled down the stretch. They got the Steelers this week. They still got Seattle and San Francisco. They got a lot. Philly's schedule's brutally hard. They have Green Bay this week. They still have to play New Orleans. And then the Giants are in Seattle. The Giants
don't have Daniel Jones right now. And
they don't have
They still have Cleveland and Seattle. So it's a mess in the NFC East.
100. So that'll be a great game.
That's this is just tip of the iceberg storylines from week 12. Beyond that, Bucks Chiefs turned out to be a great game in the end. The Broncos didn't play with a quarterback this week, and that seemed to be like the third biggest story of the week. I mean, I don't know how much of that game you caught, but it was actually kind of entertaining.
The Broncos game?
Yeah, like I was sitting there like...
It was awful. They didn't throw the ball. It was watching the Ravens play yesterday, honestly. I mean...
It was entertaining in the sense of maybe entertaining is not the right word. I couldn't pull my eyes off of it, kind of like when you're on the highway and you see a wreck on the side of the road and you try to like look over the shoulder and see exactly what's going on. Like I couldn't pull my eyes off of that game. I was intrigued every time the Broncos had the ball. You had 2 interceptions, 1 completion. I mean, that was something to behold.
And you had New Orleans in your best bets at 5.5, and that is the best bet you will have all year. Because it got up to 17.
we go by the lines when we do it on today.
Right.
Whatever happens in the next 2 days may happen. It is what it is.
And
that was the easiest one I've had. We both had a winning week last week at 3-2.
You did. I'm hot right now in the NFL, Joe. I've only got 1 college game, my best bets, because I'm just going to stay hot in the NFL. I told you how much I like San Francisco. They pulled off the upset against the Rams. They got another tough game this week against Buffalo. But look, San Francisco's starting to get healthy. It might be a little too late, but if they can get on a little run here, they could be a team to watch backing in to the playoff picture. And the game that really surprised me, though, from this past week was the Titans dismantling of the Colts. We all know the Titans are a much better road team than they are a home team. But Indy's just had their number over the years. I think in the last 24 meetings, Indy was like 20-4 against them or something absurd like that. They have the Titans number. And for them to put up 45 on that defense that's been great all year, really impressive. Derrick Henry.
It didn't surprise me that they won. It surprised me at how they won.
Correct.
Because I picked the Titans. I picked them outright during the week, and I thought that they would get them back. Tough to be a team. Tough to sweep the season series in a situation like that. And the first time they played, the Colts were very fortunate to have that FedEx driver or UPS driver, whatever he was, punting that shanked one, that had one blocked, and that changed the whole game. So there were bits and pieces of that first game where it's like, all right, when they play again, the Titans might get them. But to run it up on them the way they did, I didn't expect that. And now they're in the driver's seat to win the division.
Atlanta, same thing over Vegas. Vegas was so impressive on Sunday night. They could have beaten the Chiefs again, and then they traveled to the East Coast, and the Falcons just absolutely dismantled them. And, Joe, the Raiders-Jets game could be an interesting spot this week because, as you well know, the Jets beat the Raiders last year. In, not a similar spot. The Raiders were favored by 3, but a lot of people were picking the Jets to upset. Everybody's on the Raiders this week, but you just never know. When a team gets dismantled like that, you just don't know how they're going to respond. The Jets have been playing better.
Both teams got dismantled last week. The difference is John Gruden is coaching the Raiders and Adam Gase is coaching the Jets. And if you saw my Twitter before the game this past week for the Jets, when it was announced that Gase was taking back play calling duties, I said, we already know how this game is going to go. And the game went exactly as Adam Gase game would go. They scored 3 points on the opening drive. They never scored again. They had some boneheaded calls on 4th and 1, boneheaded coaching decisions. Play calling made no sense. And a team that had scored near 30 points the last 2 games under Dowell Loggins scored 3. And sure, the Dolphins are a solid defense, but as soon as Gase took back play calling, I knew how that game was going to go. And as long as he's in charge again this week, I know how this game's going to go. The 8 number scares me, but anybody picking survivor pools and stuff, pick the Raiders and forget it. And that's really all I can say.
I'm staying away from the Raiders. That's an interesting game. But yeah, Atlanta beating them like that was quite crazy. And then the Thanksgiving game, Washington over Dallas. We both like Dallas. We talked about it because we recorded our pod on Friday, but Joe, I think Washington this week against Pittsburgh. I talked about the spot.
They got a shot.
They had Baltimore, obviously, yesterday. They have the Bills coming up. It's the perfect sandwich spot. Washington's rolling in there with a lot of confidence. And now Bud Dupree is out for the season. So Washington can really key in on stopping TJ Watt. That'll obviously make things a lot easier for Alex Smith. The defense with that D-line, Ben likes to get the ball out of his hand quick. So I think
that's why it's a tough one for me because the spot favors Washington. The matchup certainly favors the Steelers because the strength of Washington is that D-line, but the Steelers, A, have the best O-line in the league, and B, Ben is getting the ball out quicker than anybody in the league. Chris Collinsworth remarked on the broadcast yesterday a couple of times that his average of 2.2 seconds to get rid of the ball was already first in the league, And over the course of the game, he worked it down to 2.1. So he gets the ball out the quickest. He's got that O-line. So I do think it's just a very bad matchup for Washington. And I think while, yes, it's a sandwich spot, that game yesterday for Tomlin and the Steelers probably had to feel like a loss. And they'll probably want to get that fixed before they get that big Bills game. So a lot of intrigue this past week, a lot of intrigue next week. And we said last week that we'd really dive into the NFL playoff picture this week because so much was going to become so much clearer based on the matchups we had last week. And it did. It's still murky. It's still very murky, but it's a lot clearer than it was last week. And we will get to that after our guest, Sherree Burruss, you mentioned at the beginning. I worked with her for a little bit at NBC. She's with CBS Sports now. She does a ton of things for them, many hats. Sideline reporting for college basketball, college football, the NFL. She sits behind the sports desk for the weekday shows. She does so much, and she was very kind to give us a lot of her time today in a very busy week and schedule for her. Here's the interview with Sherree Burruss. Joined this week by host and sideline reporter for CBS Sports and someone that I am proud to have once called a colleague, Sherree Burruss. It's great to see and hear from you. We know you're crazy busy, don't want to take too much time. How are you doing with everything that's going on in the world right now, plus your job and everything? I'm sure it's a whirlwind.
It really is, but I got to thank you guys, Joe, PJ, for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you guys. It's, Joe, been a minute, but things have been good. It's, thankfully a little crazy with football, which, a couple months ago, we never would have thought we would have even spoke those words and throwing college basketball that just started. So I'm really excited to be doing sidelining for college football, have some NFL games that I'm doing that I'm excited for. So, each day at a time, study sessions, wearing masks, lots of hand sanitizer on the road. So it's been quite a whirlwind to start, at a new job at CBS Sports, particularly in a COVID world, but I'm having a blast and I'm so thankful.
Sherree, that's why you're a pro, because you led me right into the first question we were going to talk to you about. As you said, you do NFL sidelines, college hoops, college football for CBS. Sometimes you're behind the sports desk. Can you just share what like a normal week for you kind of looks like, especially now, like you said, all these sports are kind of colliding with one another?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I go into studio, it's kind of like a later shift, 4-ish. We do a preview show doing a lot of like the gambling when I do CBS Sports HQ, which is based in Stanford. And then we're there throughout the entire night for all the games, wrapping things with analysts and guests just to kind of go over the games that happened. But when it comes to a sidelining week, which is what I'm getting ready for now, I have the Colts-Texans game this upcoming Sunday. So I'm excited about that. It's a lot of studying during the week, watching the games if I can. The previous Sunday, our research team does a wonderful job sending us nuggets. We have tons of emails of those, going through all that, checking social media. And then usually, I guess, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, we have Zoom meetings with the teams, which I wish they were in person. Just, you can get that contact, but the world we're in, we do Zoom meetings on those days. Then we fly in, do our best to stay as lonely and in isolation as we can on the road. Then we show up for game days on Sunday.
I'm sure it's been challenging to go through a job change and a big move during the pandemic. You started in January, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yep,
so I guess you did just miss the beginning of the pandemic, but I'm sure it still threw a wrench into things. How, if at all, did that affect some of your early stages with CBS?
So I started January 6th. I was sidelining a basketball game up until March 11th. And then the 12th was kind of, when the world imploded with COVID. So I was just, when that happened, just trying to consume as much information as I can of like what is happening with each league and starting a new job. I felt like by March, I was almost just-ish getting a hang of what I was doing. Between, sidelining and then, the anchoring stuff, either for CBS Sports Network for college basketball or HQ. And then the whole world kind of got flipped on its head. And that was just, we're always going to remember where we were and kind of what happened sort of March through September. But I will say CBS has done an absolutely wonderful job of keeping us, informed of what's going on, what's on track, the safety measures that we took. Before we can get back into the building, or even, before we could figure out if we could do sidelining. The testing is really stringent and really, easy to understand and abide by. So, we all have to be flexible. I feel like with each sport, or, even when we had the Masters, it's, a season unlike any other, and we just have to be flexible. And that's kind of what it's been. But, again, you just think back, like, in 2 years, let's hope, or, 10 years, you can be, hey, do you remember when we had to cover that NFL game or that basketball game when COVID first hit? So it's definitely historic to be a part of. And it's a whirlwind, but I really wouldn't have it any other way, I think.
That's one thing I've been telling myself. It's like, we're in history right now.
Yeah.
We don't realize it, but like a few years from now, we're going to look back on it and be like, that's what it was like to have no fans, and be like, the same way that we were like watching sports reruns when this all hit. We're going to be watching sports reruns in 7 years, and we're going to be telling our kids and beyond that grandkids why there weren't fans in the stands for those years. So we're in history right now.
Even yesterday, I'm watching the Ravens-Steelers game, and I'm like, Wednesday afternoon football. Like, this is kind of nice.
Yeah. It's also weird because, like, when you watch those, like, reruns of games and you see fans, you're like, wait, like, why are they wearing masks? Like, it's just so normal now to be like, oh, wait, there were people. Like, we think back to, like, the World Series Nats. That probably was the last big championship with fans. And you're like, how did we have thousands of people in one building?
Yeah.
So true. Now, Sherree, you talked about it, how you're doing the Texans-Colts game this week. Mm-hmm. So how fluid is everything with your schedule? Like, is that the game you're assigned? And then if that's canceled, is that it? Or are they moving stuff around for people, especially in college? Because a lot more games are getting canceled there. So how does all that stuff look for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely keep an eye on your email, keep an eye on your text messages. You just kind of never know when your game will get canceled, particularly in college, college football. That happened to me 3 times. I had 3, I think, straight weeks I had my game canceled. One of them, I flew all the way to Fresno, and my game got canceled like 10 minutes when I was 10 minutes away from the hotel, and our game got canceled. So I was like, ugh, it's just such a bummer. But obviously, in this environment, first and foremost, you have to be concerned of the safety for whoever has COVID. So that's obviously my first concern, but it's definitely keep track of your flights, where you're going. We do get assigned for NFL. So that one is kind of like, I just wait and see where I get to go.
Right.
Fingers crossed. It's an indoor stadium, particularly now that we're in December.
Yeah.
But so we just get kind of assigned for NFL and for college. I haven't been reassigned for anything yet. If it does get canceled, but I think it just depends on if the schools can get a new opponent, and we can, there's a lot of logistics that's even above my pay grade of, getting the crew and the trucks and the testing. It's a lot of things to get a game rescheduled. But I know there has been a few, I think, just in the entire, league of college football.
Gotcha. And I'll be turning the clock back on you in a few moments. But first, some NFL questions, since we're on the topic. Which NFL game that you've covered at CBS so far has been your favorite, whether it be because of the game itself, the teams involved, the venue that it was at? Do you have one? I know it's only been a couple of months, but does one stick out so far as a favorite?
So I got to do a Chargers-Jags game in LA at the new SoFi Stadium.
That's a good game too. It was like 30-20.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it really was a shootout there. Jacksonville really, kind of clawed their way back in there. But I really enjoyed talking to Justin Herbert. He was a really, calm, cool kind of kid. And that stadium was beautiful. Like, fans are absolutely going to love that when they finally can get in there. I'm trying to think what other games I've had so far.
You had the 24-0 Miami Jets game, but I won't even go there as a Jets fan.
So is it weird when you kind of just have like the whole place to yourself, right? Are you pretty much the only one like in the lower bowl kind of?
Yeah. When there's no fans in the stadiums, yes. Or there's still security, which I'm always like, I appreciate the security, but I guess maybe if some rogue person runs in.
Right.
So it's just kind of like me in we call it the moat, that first kind of row that I get to roam around. But yeah, it's definitely weird because you miss like the energy, but we have our IFBs, which is kind of like a headphone just in one ear so you can hear the broadcast. Mm-hmm. So this way I try to make sure I can hear the fans to get like the vibe, but there really is no vibe. So it's definitely an interesting kind of aspect, but I have had the Houston Texans once already this season, and they do have a limited amount of fans. So you kind of get a taste of it, but being in a stadium for a football game with no fans was a total first for me, and it was bizarre.
I was at Lucas Oil Stadium for the Combine 2 or 3 years ago now, and there were only like a few hundred fans in the upper deck. And I thought that was weird, being in a football stadium with pretty much nothing. I can't even imagine what it's like right now.
It's exactly like that. It's just kind of, you watch at home and like you don't get to actually hear the fans cheering, but you're physically there and you're just like, okay, then why isn't anyone clapping or booing or what's going on?
Right. We finally made it now to week 13 after the longest week in NFL history. Mike Tirico kept bringing that up in the broadcast. We started with Thanksgiving, obviously, with the Texans, and then last night's game. Overall, what have your impressions been with the NFL? No cancellations up to this point, a couple postponements here and there, but they've gotten every game in thus far. What have been your impressions of that?
It's impressive, the fact that they were able to get this far. I'm sure it has been a monster headache beyond any of our imaginations on how to figure out the logistics of moving games and scheduling and the buys. One of my colleagues, Jonathan Jones, wrote a really interesting article earlier. I'm trying to think what week it was, maybe the first single digit weeks, just about the competitive balance of the NFL this season and how that's going to be so affected by COVID. Like the Broncos didn't have a quarterback. What world would that ever happen? So it's so interesting for me to watch how we got to this point and kind of the extra hurdles, health-wise, on the field. But I totally give kudos to the NFL for being able to get this far. It seems like generally, everyone has been able to, recover from COVID, which has been, again, probably a little preachy, but, obviously health and safety is number one. These are, human beings, they have families and they have to make a living. So I'm thankful that they've been able to get that kind of figured out, but hopefully this can kind of be a framework for NHL, MLB. I keep looking at my text being like, when are we getting an NHL season? Is it January 1? What's baseball going to do? So I'm hoping this kind of sets the stage for sports next season or next year.
Now, definitely. And you've seen a lot of these NFL teams play in person. You cover the league. Do you see anybody beating Kansas City right now? Joe tells me you're a big Packers fan, so I know how much you like the Pack, and they're obviously rolling right now in the NFC. But Kansas City being the defending champs, they just look so strong. Can you see anybody? Who do you think is the team that can maybe give them the best run?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. The Raiders actually beat the Chiefs, right?
They beat them, and they almost beat them a second time.
They did.
So
I mean, the Chargers almost beat the Chiefs with Justin Herbert, in one of the first ones. So there's clear chinks in their armor. Now, I think I'd have to get a new job if I knew actually how to beat the Chiefs. But they're just almost too good. Like the adjustments that they can make, Mahomes just literally he just makes it look too easy. You're just like, that throw is impossible. How do you throw across your body, running backwards, and hit your dude in the end zone? So they're stacked. It's going to be hard. I have actually a group text with some girlfriends, and I keep telling them, I want to win the Super Bowl so bad for the Packers. I just don't want to play the Chiefs because I know they are just I need someone else to beat the Chiefs before we get to the Super Bowl, because I think they're just a juggernaut in the league this season.
In the NFC, who do you think's the toughest competitor for the Packers? Who do you think would be the team now?
That Tampa game really did not sit well with me. Granted, it was this anomaly day for Aaron Rodgers because he never throws more than one interception, let alone a pick six.
Yeah.
But I just get a little concerned with our run defense for the Packers. So any team with, a good run game.
The loss to the Vikings was bad. Yep. That was just what I was going to say. That was a rough one.
So, but you know what? I liked Preston Smith's scoop and score the other day. Always loved beating the Bears. So that, that stoked a little bit more confidence in me as we head into December.
The NFC I can't figure out because you have the Saints and Packers have played a game, and then the Bucks can't beat the Saints twice, but then the Bucks killed the Packers. It's like a circle of everybody beating each other, and I have no idea how it's going to go.
I wonder what the status of Drew Brees is. Where is he in his recovery with these ribs? Can the Saints keep going with Taysom Hill? And, you have Jameson just sitting on the bench. Hey, again, above my
Seattle, their defense is getting much better. So, I mean, the offense is obviously stacked.
I love Russell Wilson. I went to college at Wisconsin when he was there that 1 year. We should have won the national championship, but that's a different story. But Russ really, he might just get overshadowed by Mahomes.
Yeah.
But Russ is a really good quarterback that's silently just slaying the league.
Let Russ cook.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And look, I said I was going to turn the clock back a little bit in a few moments. Before CBS, you were with NBC in DC, and you were spoiled. I mean, to put it bluntly, you got to cover championship runs for the Caps, Nats, and Mystics. Which of those runs was your favorite to cover? And pick whichever one is your favorite. Take us through that run.
So I will give the Mystics some credit. Unfortunately, that was, I think, still during the Nats run. So we didn't get to cover as many games or be there in person, but like snaps to the ladies, man. I can't forget the Mystics. It's just so hard to pick between the Nats and the Caps, because I think my favorite thing about, I want to say being, I guess, a sports reporter, but I love people and I love to like tell the stories and like get to know the guys. And, you know, you're spending literally, at least for baseball, it's literally a straight month, right? Like it was October 1st through Halloween. And then for Caps, it's April through June. And you are seeing these guys probably every day, right? Because you're either at a game or you're doing media availability. So like you get to know them, they get to know you. You know, you ask Ovi like about his kid before the media avail, or, you know, you joke with Adam Eaton about a car, or, you know, you get to know these guys. And I think in general, that's just kind of my favorite. But, you know, the fact that it had been so long for DC sports to have a championship, and then we got to have two of them, is definitely something I relish in. And, you know, we look back on, and we have a sports room and we have like bobbleheads, and we have the championship champagne bottles from Caps, and I have my rose colored glasses that Para and them had for Nat. So it's definitely fun to look back. I don't know if I can pick a favorite, but I will say because of the Caps winning the cup, I'm definitely a diehard hockey fan now.
Yeah, that was an incredible run. That was when I was interning. I interned up until the Lightning series, and then the semester ended. But that was, even to be part of half of that run was incredible. So I can only imagine you getting to be a part of two. What that was like. Another historic thing on the other end of the spectrum, you and I were sitting next to each other in the press box the day that Alex Smith suffered the leg injury. I mean, that day is ingrained in my mind forever. I was one of the first ones around us to notice it. I remember telling you.
I think I asked you, I was like, is it his head? Like, because he kept having, I was like, what was it?
I was just going to say, you asked me, and I said, it's his leg. Sherree, don't even look at it. I don't remember if you did or didn't look at it, but I told you don't look at it. So it was a horrible day. And I'm sitting here this past couple of weeks on Thanksgiving watching him, and I just wanted to get your take on it. Thinking back to that day, seeing it in person, I know Kerwin had an incredible shot of the leg. We spent that night debating whether we should or couldn't run it. And here we are 2 years later, and they're tied for first place. He's at quarterback, and they've got a real shot to win the division. How insane and remarkable is this all at the same time right now?
I mean, if I were his wife, I'd been like, get your butt on the couch. You are never playing another down of football again. Like, absolutely not. And again, it kind of goes back to, you know, getting to know the players. Like when Alex and Liz first came to DC, you know, I tried to make a point to like, you know, be nice and like get to know them as people. So to see him go down again, first off, you and I were just like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? Then my next thought was, oh my gosh, his wife is watching this. That has to be mortifying. And obviously, you know, in hindsight, we didn't know the struggles he was going through with, you know, having to have so many surgeries and the infection and then like almost dying. I mean, just to know what he went through, to know he is back now. Like I still get nervous when I see him like, you know, take a hit or even like just run out on the field. Every
time somebody's near him, I'm going like this.
Yeah, I'm like, please be careful. But if this, you know, doesn't show us the determination, and, you know, he said he's doing it to show his kids that you can come back from anything. I genuinely don't think there is a better example than what Alex Smith did. And for the team to still, you know, have faith in him and keep him around and give him this chance. I mean, they're literally, I don't know who could win comeback player of the year over Alex, considering everything that he's overcome.
It's done. And I was talking about this with PJ last week. The people that are loving this the most right now are the people sitting back in LA or Orlando at Disney headquarters, just continuing to add lines to the Alex Smith movie script. That's who is loving this the most right now. So
Disney Plus is probably already working on
streaming
the
film.
Yeah, they already got Ryan Gosling cast as Alex Smith. They got the whole deal.
That's great.
Now, Sherree, if Alex pulls this off, he leads Washington to the playoffs. They obviously, you know, Haskins, it looks like they're moving on for him. If he leads them to the playoffs, do you think they come back with him next year, or do they look at maybe getting a quarterback in the draft?
Yes to both. I guess Kyle Allen is a Rivera guy because they were together in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost wonder, depending on where they fall in the draft. I mean, Alex is not, some 20-something-year-old guy. He's been in the league for a really long time. So I would have to say you have to stick with him. But you have to kind of consider, this is a business. You have to consider the future of the franchise. If they do move on from Dwayne, is Kyle Allen the future? Is there some quarterback out there we don't know about that they have their eyes on? But on the flip side, if you think about DC, they had RG3, they had Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need to rehash the saga of what happened with Kirk in DC because, they were the last two, right, to make the playoffs 2012 with RG3. And as much as I love that there is some loyalty in sports, at the end of the day, it's a business.
Yeah,
and they're I hate to say it, there isn't loyalty, but there is. So it's kind of I hope they would keep Alex there, particularly if he's successful. But at the same time, I'm not a naive new sports fan that you got to know that there's a little bit of a business that goes into it.
And this was something that PJ and I were going to get into as we went along. And the fact that you brought it up, I'll bring it up now. I think they could use the Dolphins as the blueprint. Like they had Fitzpatrick, they still drafted Tua. Like they are in that spot where they could probably rely on Alex if he's healthy, as long as he stays healthy next year, and then have him groom somebody else along.
Exactly. And you got to look at Arizona. I mean, what they drafted, was it Josh Rosen? And it's kind of like, all right, cool. Let's get this Kyler Murray kid. And he's like absolutely killing it. So sometimes you just got to kind of chalk up the loss and move on.
Joe and I have talked about this too. The NFC East is in such an interesting situation because the division is so bad that the three teams that don't make the playoffs will get top 10 picks, while the team that does will fall all the way back to like 16, 17. So it's pretty interesting to see what would happen in Washington if they make the playoffs.
Leave it to the NFC East, of course.
Absolutely. So we have two final segments that we do with all our guests. Before we get to that, one more question for you. You mentioned you're a Wisconsin alum. You love your Badgers. They're ranked 4th right now. They're killing it in college hoops. How excited are you for this season, watching them, and to possibly get a chance to maybe do one of their games on the sidelines?
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely love to be back in Madison for a game. And it's so great to see the guys back out there, I graduated in 2012, so I'm a little disconnected from like knowing everyone's names, by heart and all of that jazz. But love watching Badger basketball. It broke my heart when we got knocked out of March Madness. I guess that was 2 years ago, kind of now, in the first round, because making it, to the championship and Final Fours, that was my heyday. But I would have a whole list of things I needed to do if I could ever go back to Madison. I don't know if they even give me a game, like a Badger game in general, just because they'll be like, you might be too much of a fan to go back. So, pump the brakes on the cheese curds and brats and beer, but I would totally petition to go.
All right, very nice. So as I mentioned, two final segments. We do the Swift seven rapid fire, anything goes type questions. And then Joe has a trivia question for you at the end that we do for all.
Okay.
All right, Sherree, number one, and I'm so happy we have a CBS person because I've been waiting to ask them this question. What is your favorite CBS jingle? Is it the college football theme song, the college basketball, or the NFL football Sunday theme song?
I think now it's the NFL Sunday just because now I'm a part of it. So now I'm like, you kind of get the tingle up your spine. You're like, all right, we're coming to me. Like that, I'm a part of this. Like you think of NFL on CBS, like that's like a thing, and to be a part of that is, such an honor.
That's very true. Number two, your favorite event that you've ever gotten to cover?
Oh, that's really tough. Can I just say like championship games when my team won? I covered the Royals when they lost the World Series in Game 7, and Game 7 was awesome, but Game 7s are only awesome when your team wins. So I'll give Caps and Nats a nod to those.
Number three, what's your favorite story that you've ever done?
Ooh, that's really tough. Favorite story. I got to cover, was it the Fantastic Seven? What, like the gymnasts, like it was oh my gosh, I can't even think of their names.
Like Nazi,
Gabby Douglas?
Nazi, or Nazi
no,
and
it's like when they had
Colin
the
Johnson?
last Olympics in Atlanta in 96 before they blew up the Georgia Dome. They had those girls come back. It was like Dominique Dawes.
Sherree Burruss, was that right?
Yes. Yep. So 5 of the 7 girls came back and kind of did like a walkthrough of the Georgia Dome before they imploded it. And like growing up, like I wanted to be Dominique Dawes. Like I wanted to go to law school at Stanford, like the whole 9. So getting to kind of go back with those ladies was pretty cool.
That is. Number 4, more likely to happen. The Jets finish winless or the Steelers finish unbeaten?
Jets. Sorry, Joe.
Don't be sorry. It gets me Trevor Lawrence. That's all that matters right now. I'm rooting for it at this point. Just get Adam Gase out of here. I'm sure you enjoyed his conversations or whatever. Don't answer that. Don't get in trouble.
He was actually really, I mean, not saying he wouldn't be delightful, but he was really nice on the Zoom and like really personable. It was a good Zoom coach or Zoom call with him.
There you go. At least there's something salvageable from the whole dumpster fire of the Jets season. Number 5, favorite person you ever got to interview?
Oh, wow. I will say getting to chat with Alex Ovechkin and like doing those fun things with him, because he had a baby. We had this like fake baby doll for him to change the diaper and he dropped it. So that was great. And then we played a shooting game with him once, and that he shot the little, like you have like a Nerf gun and there's 5 floating balls with air. He missed one and he goes, "Oh, I get it. Ping, ping, ping." And he hit all 5 of them down. Like one adjustment got all of them. So I think for sure, like getting to know Ovi and his competitiveness, that's pretty cool.
Favorite city you ever been to, whether vacation or through work?
We love DC. I talk about it almost every day on how much I like want to be back in DC, and I miss, my favorite restaurants and going to Georgetown. So I think DC is top of my list.
Good answer. And number 7, you made it through into December now. Do you have a favorite Christmas movie?
Ooh, Christmas. Let me think. I do like The Grinch with Jim Carrey. I have to watch the like weird claymation, like Frosty.
Every year, me too.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are probably the top 2 of my favorite. Would you call Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yes.
Halloween,
I have this argument with so many
Christmas?
people. I have this argument with so many people. It is a Christmas movie. It just so happens that they get Halloween to the Christmas point via Halloween. But it's a Christmas movie.
I like that one a lot.
I swear, I literally watched a documentary on this yesterday. I love Christmas. I watched a documentary on this yesterday. It's a Christmas movie. Tim Burton intended it to be a Christmas movie just through the eyes of Halloween type characters.
So mark that one down for me then also.
There you go. You go. All right. You made it through the 7. Now we go to the trivia question.
I'm so nervous.
We've had a mixed bag. Some have gotten it, some haven't. Joe B missed an Ovi question. So
what?
Next time you see
I don't
Joe
feel
B,
so bad then.
So don't feel bad if you get it wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your first Washington football team game that you covered for NBC was back in December of 16, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And your last season was last year in 2019. So
in
that span, the team had 7 different quarterbacks start a game.
Yeah.
90 seconds or 3 strikes. Can you give us 5 of the 7 quarterbacks?
Yes. I actually just had this conversation with my husband because we heard this information. We're like, who could they be? Okay. You have Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, Kirk Cousins, and then Josh Johnson.
Yep.
Got it.
Is that all of them? Did I miss one?
Well, you got Mark Sanchez was the only one you missed. But you got Kyle Allen there instead, and you gave us more than we asked for. So you got it. There you go. Now
How did I forget Mark?
Now the next time you see Joe B, you could say that you got yours right and he got his wrong.
Yes, I'm going to text it that. He owes me a bottle of wine or something for beating him.
Joe B was not happy about it either. He's like, do not show this. Do not show this. It was awesome. Well, Sherree, thanks so much. It was great meeting you. Thanks for giving us all your insight, letting us know what it's like to be in CBS, and good luck in Houston this week. That should be a fun game, Indy and Houston.
That should be.
Should be a really
It is that nice division matchup. Well, thank you so much, guys. This was a blast.
It was great seeing you for the first time in like a year, but it doesn't feel like a year because this year doesn't make any sense to anybody. So
we'll put an asterisk right next to it.
Yeah. Well, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy this week down in Houston.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you, Sherree.
Bye.
Once again, that was Sherree Burruss of CBS Sports, kind enough to join us on her way to Houston for the Colts and Texans AFC South divisional clash. Joe, we talked to her about the playoff picture, which we're going to get into right now. I asked her if she could see anybody beating Kansas City, and she's like, look, the Raiders beat them once. They almost beat them twice.
They almost did.
Tampa was there late in that game, so they're obviously going to get everybody's best shots, being the defending champion, and people know that they're the team they got to go through. But it's tough for me to see right now anybody beating that team, especially in the AFC. I think there are teams in the NFC a lot better equipped to beat them. But we'll get into that in a little bit. We'll just go division by division here and kind of look at the overall playoff picture. Starting the AFC East, and Patriots still hanging on by a thread there at 5-6. Dolphins in second place at 7-4. The Bills in first at 8-3.
And they play each other, so that'll have a big impact. So they still have one more game against each other.
Again, the Bills' schedule. You got San Francisco this week on Monday night. You got Pittsburgh next week. You still got the Dolphins, as you mentioned. So the Bills got a lot of games that we're going to really find a lot about this team. Do you like them, though, to win the East, or do you like?
If you want to war game it out, I was just going to say, let's war game it out real quick. So they got the Niners in Arizona on Monday night. That's another one of those switches that we learned of last week. So they got the Niners in Arizona. I'm going to give them a loss.
I think they win.
Okay. So I got a loss. Then home against the Steelers, I got a win. What do you got there?
Let's agree that they'll go 1-1 in those two games.
Okay, whichever way you slice it, they go 1-1.
I would agree.
I think they win against the Broncos. I think they lose on the road against New England. They almost lost to New England at home. Cam fumbled it late.
Yeah.
I think Belichick coaxes a win out of that team. It's a Sunday night game in Foxborough. So I think they're 2-2 in their next 4 games going into Week 17 against Miami. If that's the case, they're 10-5. On the flip side, Miami's schedule, it's not the easiest either, but it's also not as bad as the Bills' schedule. They have a cupcake this week. They're home against the Bengals. Right. Then they are going to lose against the Chiefs next week. Then they get the Patriots at home. And I like their chances against the Patriots more because of Flores than I do the Bills' chances against them. And they go west against the Raiders on a Saturday. And then they got the Bills game at the end. So again, I think they beat the Bengals. I think they beat the Patriots. I think they lose the 2 AFC West games. So going into the last week, you've got both teams still where they are right now, a game apart. You'd have a 10-5 Bills team. You'd have a 9-6 Dolphins team into that last one. And now I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of what the tiebreakers look like in that scenario, but it could set up for an interesting thing where any way you slice it, they will probably be within a game of each other or tied going into that last one. So the AFC East is a tough one to pick.
That Dolphins-Raiders matchup is going to be, that's going to be massive in Week 16. And then they got the Bills right there. That'll be big. I think the Bills and the Dolphins, honestly, I think they both maybe go 2-3 down the stretch. I think whichever team goes 3-2 will win the division. Who won the Bills won in the first matchup against the Dolphins? Yes.
The Bills did.
They beat them in Miami. So they have that going for them. All right, next division. We look here on our laptops. Let's see. Is the AFC?
I got the South on mine. What are you looking at?
I got the North, but AFC South is good too. I was just refreshing it. All right, Tennessee 8-3 at the top. Indianapolis 7-4, and then Houston 4-7. They're out. Jacksonville 1-10. So the Colts and the Titans obviously have a split against each other. Tennessee's got a big game against Cleveland this week, and the Colts have Houston. I think the Titans are the best team in the division. I think they're the best. They're the second best offense in the AFC. I'd put them over the Steelers, behind the Chiefs. Henry, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, their offense is just nasty. The defense is the problem. Are they going to be able to outscore teams, especially in December football, where, these are when guys know this is when their paychecks are earned and everybody's fighting for playoff spots. But the Titans showed you last year that they can win this time of the year and in the playoffs. They got the Packers Week 16 in Lambeau. You got to figure that'll be a loss. But they got, after the Browns this week, at Jacksonville, home against Detroit, and then at Green Bay, at Houston. So you'd have to think
I go with the Titans here. I got to go with the Titans here.
Yeah.
I think, for me, it's an easier schedule for the Titans. They're more equipped to win in December, I think, than the Colts are. And again, the schedule sets up nicely for them. They should win their next 3 in a row: home Cleveland, at Jacksonville, and then home Detroit. That already puts them at 11. And then looking at the Colts schedule, where they're currently sitting at 7 wins, I don't see them getting to 11. So already the Titans would be there. I think the Colts split with the Texans. I think they lose at Las Vegas. I think they lose at the Steelers, and that's already it. That's already 3 losses for them. So I think the Titans have a handle on the division now.
I like the Titans too. AFC West, Kansas City is going to win the division.
They're done there. And then the North, the Steelers have that. There's no coming back, I don't think, for anybody beneath them. So those divisions are set. Where it gets interesting in the rest of the AFC then is the wild card picture, because that's when you start to get into some crazy scenarios, too many for us to go through. But the crux of it is you're looking at a currently 7-4 Dolphins team, a currently 7-4 Colts team, a currently 8-3 Browns team as the 3 current wild cards. Those are the 3 teams sitting in those 3 wild card spots right now. Again, this year 3, not 2. The teams knocking on the door, 6-5 Raiders, 6-5 Ravens, are the teams knocking on the door. So right now, those 6-win teams are a game behind both the Colts and the Dolphins. I think that the Raiders will be on the outside looking in, the Ravens will creep in, and I think the Ravens will actually steal the Colts spot. I think that is the team that gets left out. Looking at the schedules like we did for the Dolphins and for the Colts, I think the Colts finish 9-7. I think the Dolphins get to 9-7 or 10-6, and then again, it would depend on the tiebreakers. And right now, again, I'm not going to get into the tiebreakers now. There's so much that can change with that. So I'm going to say the Colts are the team on the outside looking in, with the Browns, Dolphins, and Ravens sneaking into those 3 spots.
The team that's interesting to watch in all this is Cleveland at 8-3, because the Browns are at Tennessee this week. They're home against the Ravens next week. And then they got Pittsburgh at home week 17. And Pittsburgh likely is going to play all their starters because they obviously want to win the 1 seed and get the bye over Kansas City. So Cleveland, we're going to find a lot about this team. I'm not sold on them yet. It seems like every one of their wins come in a monsoon at home. They barely just scraped by Jacksonville last week. No Odell Beckham, obviously. They do get Myles Garrett back this week, though, against Tennessee, which will be huge. But Cleveland's the team for me.
Here's the thing. You look at their schedule, even with those 3 tough games against the Titans, Ravens, and Steelers, they play the Giants and the Jets. I'm giving them 2 wins there, and that's already 10.
The Giants, I'm not so sure about, because, again, Cleveland will be coming off games against Tennessee and Baltimore, and that is a major letdown spot against the Giants. That is a tricky spot. I'm telling you right now, that could be an upset.
It could be a letdown spot, but on the flip side, I love a team that's in the playoff picture that's come off of probably 2 losses. And if you're coming off of 2 losses and you know you're up against it, we're going to learn a lot about the Browns in that Giants game if they're actually a real playoff team. And I think they are, because of the way they run the ball with 2 running backs and their defense. So that's why I'm not afraid of either of those games at MetLife Stadium in back-to-back weeks. So I think right there they're at 10 wins, and that is probably going to be enough, considering that the last spot between the Colts and the Dolphins is going to be probably a 9-win spot pending a tiebreaker. So the magic number for the Browns is 10, and I think they'll get there with just those 2 games alone. Anything else they can get against the Titans, Ravens, or Steelers is gravy.
It's crazy that it seems like every year the magic number is 10 to get in the playoffs, and it's a lot.
Except for Todd Bowles' first year with the Jets, when they had 10 wins and missed the playoffs.
There you go, Jeff. Keep salting. NFC, we got the Saints, NFC South, Saints, Falcons, Bucks, and or Saints, Bucks, Falcons, and then the Panthers.
That division's done. That division's done because the Saints swept the Bucks. So with a few weeks left, the Bucks have to not tie the Saints, but surpass them, which would mean, they would have to. The Saints are probably going to get to at least 11 wins. The Bucks have to get to 12, which means
they're going to win out.
What am I saying? They're 7-5. They can't get to 12. So as long as the Saints get to 11, it's theirs.
Right. Correct. NFC North, same thing. The Packers got it in the bag. Chicago's lost 5 in a row. They were 5-1. Now they're 5-6. Minnesota was the team that we thought maybe could create something, but that loss to Dallas really hurt any chance.
It hurt, but they did get the win and stay alive against the Panthers. When we were going through that a couple of weeks ago, we said that there's a possibility they lose to maybe the Panthers. We said give them week 13 6-6. They're at 5-6. They got the Jaguars at home this week, so they could still get to that 6-6. They're not going to be in the mix for the division against the Packers, but they, as we get to it in a moment, will certainly be in the wild card mix. The NFC West, that's the best division in football.
Yes.
The two teams that probably don't have a chance to win the division anymore are the Cardinals and the Niners. The Rams still could take it from the Seahawks, but the Seahawks schedule is a joke. It's an absolute joke the rest of the season.
Yes, Giants I know, Jets I know, Washington I know. Yeah,
they've got. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm ready to give them the division without any hesitation. Their schedule is home to the Colt McCoy-led Giants this week, home to the Jets, at the Washington football team, then the big home game against the Rams, and then at the Niners. But those next three are already pretty much going to get them over the finish line. And they deserve it. I mean, they deserve it.
Right.
They've been playing. They've started to fix their issues on defense. I still want to see them do it against a good team. Holding the Cardinals and Rams back-to-back weeks to a combined 44 was impressive after giving up 44 to the Bills.
Yeah.
The next 2 weeks combining for allowing 44. But then they played the lowly Eagles. Then they're playing the Giants with Colt McCoy. Then they're playing the Jets. Then they're playing Washington. So we might have a little bit of a mirage here about how good their defense actually is. But again, they did look fine the last 2 weeks against the Cardinals and the Rams before that Eagles game.
Right. And now as we look at the NFC as a whole.
You can't skip the most interesting division as far as the division winner,
right, the NFC.
East. I know we want to forget about it. Yeah. I know we want to forget about it, but we can't forget about it. Because
we've talked about how tough the schedules are for all of those teams. I think the best team in the division is the Giants, actually. I do. The Cowboys are the most talented. But I think the Giants are the team that can get an upset where we're not expecting them to get one. And I think that's what's going to be the difference. These teams obviously still have a divisional game or two against each other, and they'll have to win those. But if any team is going to win a game they're not supposed to, I think it might be the Giants. And because of that, I think it could be that Browns game. We'll see. But because of that, I think I'd give the nod to the Giants to win.
I think it's the Cardinals game the week before. Because like I said, I think that Browns game,
yeah, true.
I think the Browns are coming off 2 losses and they won't go 3 in a row. Knowing again that if they win 2 games at MetLife Stadium, they're going to make the playoffs with 10 wins. So I think they pull off an upset against the Cardinals, possibly. I think they beat the Cowboys at home to end the season. But at most, then in my book, at most, that gets them to 6, which could be the magic number. Now you look at Washington's schedule, another brutal schedule. It's not going to – I think the universe is just taunting us now because you have the worst division probably ever, and down the stretch, they have the toughest schedules of anybody in the league. This week's a tough spot against the Steelers. And then they go west against the Niners. Then they're home to the Seahawks, home to the Panthers, at the Eagles. Do you see them getting to 6? Again, 6 being the operating magic number. I don't see it.
What's funny?
No, but I don't see it.
What's funny is that all these schedules, too, are so hard because all these teams are so bad.
Yeah.
We look at them on other people's schedules and we're like, oh, that's a win, that's a win. And they look at other people and they're like, oh, that's a tough game.
Exactly. I mean, I think they maybe lose the next 3 weeks in a row against Washington. Against the Steelers, Niners, and Seahawks. But then the Ron Rivera Bowl, I'm giving a win to Washington.
Yeah, that'll be
on the 27th.
Yep.
And then last week of the season at Philly with a chance to get to that magic number of 6. So they could, again, in the same way with the Giants, where I look at their schedule and see one definite win, or at least that I'm going to lean them, then it's just a matter of pulling an upset somewhere else. I feel like I'm John King at the big board on election night. We're trying to figure out the math here of where they can get to that magic number of 6 instead of 270. The Eagles schedule, again, brutal. They get the Packers, Saints, and then at the Cardinals. And they finish with 2 divisional games against the Cowboys and Washington. Now, they are at 3 wins. So Washington and the Giants have that little bit of a head start where they're at 4. They have the tie, which could throw another wrench into the equation. And then I think the one team that I'm counting out and maybe I'm making a mistake doing this because nobody knows in this terrible division.
Right.
The one team that I'm intent to count out is the Cowboys. We said they could pull off the upset against the Ravens, depending on who the Ravens have back. Could they lose on the road against the Bengals after what we just saw the Giants do on the road against the Bengals? Yeah, that game's a toss-up.
Yeah.
Then they probably lose to the Niners. Then they host the Eagles, and they're at the Giants. I don't know that I could definitively say they have 3, because, again, they're going to need 3 probably, not 2, 3. So it's between Washington and the Giants for me.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch how that division plays out. The playoff picture, I mean, really cut and dry, especially at the top. New Orleans, Seattle, Green Bay, like we said, whoever wins the NFC East. The wild card teams, you got to think the Rams and the Bucks make it. And then it really comes down to Arizona, Minnesota, and San Francisco. I think San Francisco, now that they got some guys back, even without Kittle and without Garoppolo, I actually think they're the best of the 3 teams. But again, because of the division that they play in, it's just going to be tough to get wins. Minnesota, they got Jacksonville this week. They obviously still have some other divisional games against the Bears and Detroit, so that'll help. And Arizona, the division they play in. It's just like San Francisco. So it's tough.
If the Falcons' schedule wasn't so difficult, the way they're playing, I'd be tempted to make them my dark horse. But then you look at the schedule and you second guess that, because they're home against the Saints, at the Chargers, home against the Bucks, at the Chiefs, and then at the Bucks. If their schedule wasn't so brutal, I'd be tempted to pick them as a dark horse, but their schedule is a nightmare.
Oh, God, that's brutal. Yeah, the Falcons always get going this time of the year. I hope Morris gets the job, because
I do too. He deserves it.
They really have been playing well under him. That's the NFL playoff picture. Again, it'll be a huge week in the NFL this week. Going over to college now, Joe. We got a big bomb in college football this morning after Coastal Carolina and Liberty got postponed. BYU swooped in, and now they're traveling to Myrtle Beach to play Coastal this week. A huge game for the group of 5. BYU is not going to make the playoff. The committee's made that clear. They're just not impressed with them. They're too far down. We'll see if they'll win over
the only way, like we said, is if they also schedule Cincinnati and dominate them.
Correct.
And they will need help in front of them.
Correct. I can't wait for this game. BYU's favored by 10 at Coastal. And, I'm intrigued to take Coastal, because I think that a person that hasn't seen these 2 teams play, but is a football fan, is going to know the name Zach Wilson. And they're just automatically going to be like, oh, that kid's good, and he's just going to blow them out. But we've talked about Coastal a bunch, how much we like them. And with game day there at home,
they have fans. They do have fans.
They do have fans. So we'll see what happens. I'm just glad that BYU is playing somebody.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. But that'll be a fun game, a huge game for the group of 5. And who makes it to the New Year's Bowl, and if they can jump Cincinnati, we'll see.
And ahead of them, the picture remained largely unchanged this week. The largest jump was Iowa State getting into the top 10, which gives some faint hope of life still to the Big 12. I don't see a path for them.
No.
But the fact that they're 9th, they have a chance. Georgia's not going to play in a championship game, probably. Florida could still lose another game, and who knows what happens in the SEC title game. Same thing with A&M. Who knows? Ohio State. Who knows how the committee is going to view that? If they
that's the team to me that is the biggest question mark.
This week they're playing. Next week they're probably going to not have a game if Michigan's now having a COVID issue. So that means they're going to not make the Big Ten title game because they're not going to have enough games. So do they just put them in because of Justin Fields and how dominant they could be? Or are they looked at as a 5-0 team who didn't show enough? Then Clemson and Notre Dame, one of those teams is going to get eliminated in the ACC title game. So you're starting to look, and it's not impossible for Iowa State to run the table, win the Big 12, have some impressive wins on their slate, and get in. But the Big 12 is very much on life support now. They need a lot of help. The Big 12, oddly enough, as a Power 5, probably needs as much help as the Group of 5 with Cincinnati and BYU. Pac-12's done. Pac-12's done with the Oregon State win over Oregon. But it remained largely unchanged this week. But even though it remained unchanged, it got a lot more interesting because of everything going on with Ohio State and because of Iowa State creeping into the top 10. When I saw the rankings reveal that they had a Big 12 team in the top 10 again, it made me think a little bit. Just not impossible.
Well, it's not far-fetched. They're going to jump Georgia if they win the Big 12 because Georgia's not going to beat anybody.
And then, if they win the Big 12, I think they jump Cincinnati.
To me, that's the key. Is what they think of Cincinnati and how they view the Big 12. Because if Florida loses to Bama, they're done. Joe, I think Auburn's going to beat A&M this weekend. I really do.
I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. I think A&M's got a loss on their schedule.
I think they're going to be done. And then if Notre Dame beats Clemson again, Clemson's out. And Ohio State, you talk about. I think Maryland and Ohio State are going to play next week. I think Ohio State's not even going to risk it with Michigan. They're just going to be like, look, you guys are sick. You're probably going to screw us. We're not playing you. We haven't played Maryland yet.
But Maryland's got a game, though, next week. Am I forgetting my own team? I think Maryland plays Rutgers next week, if I'm not mistaken. They have Maryland's got a set game on the schedule against Rutgers next week. So they don't have that.
Okay. So I guess they'll look around then in the Big Ten. If there's any other team that's off because of COVID, maybe they'll play. Ohio State's going to get that 6th game. I was going to say,
Ohio State almost has to hope that there's a cancellation in the Big Ten so they can schedule another game just to get up to the number.
So it's Ohio State. I mean, they're one of the top 3 brands in the sport. I just think that, the committee, college football is going to find a way to give them a fair shake to, and like you said, they have Justin Fields. He's a marquee player. They're going to find a way to get him in. But Iowa State, you make a good point. I didn't think about it, but now I'm looking at it and I'm like, they're going to jump short. It's not impossible. So many teams down there in the 10 and 8, 9, 10, 11 range need things to happen for them. But they can do.
But yes and no, because in that 8, 9, 10 plus range, I don't think Georgia has any path, even though they're still at 8.
Georgia has no path. No.
I can't believe that they're still at 8.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put them there.
BYU should be where Georgia is.
Absolutely. And that would make things more interesting. So there's still so much that's going to happen. We know that this is still too early to look at it. But now is when you start to look at who needs to lose to whom to allow which team to maybe jump some teams. And that's what we can do. And now BYU.
What do you think is the scenario that's most likely going to happen?
Most likely. Clemson runs the table. They looked pissed off with Lawrence back the other day. Clemson runs the table and they get number 2. Bama doesn't lose. They're number 1. The 1 and 2, Bama, Clemson. I think that Notre Dame being in a conference this year helps them. And I think that their only loss, if they only lose to Clemson the rest of the way.
By a certain amount. It's got to be by a certain amount.
Yes. If they don't get the doors blown off of them, I think they will still get in. The same way that you're talking about Fields, in the same way you're talking about Fields being a brand and Ohio State being a brand, Notre Dame's probably still the biggest brand overall. So I could still see them taking 4. And then if Ohio State gets the 6th game and wins the Big Ten title, they will probably take 3. So I think the most likely scenario, while we're beating ourselves up trying to figure it all out, I think the most likely scenario is the top 4 teams that we still see right now are the top 4 teams in the end. Because I agree with you that A&M loses this week. I agree with you that Florida loses to Bama. I don't see a path for Cincinnati unless they get BYU on the schedule, at which point BYU and Cincinnati, one will cancel the other. If BYU doesn't already lose this week to Coastal, Georgia's gone. They shouldn't even be at 8. So I think the most likely scenario is the top 4 teams. It really hinges on Ohio State. But now all of a sudden, if you see Clemson beat Notre Dame by 30 and Ohio State is a 5-0 team that the committee doesn't feel deserves to be put in, now that opens 2 spots. And can you pick 2 teams?
Well, again, it happens. It depends what happens in the other games. If A&M runs the table, if they don't lose this week, run the table, I think they're in. And then if Cincinnati runs the table, beats Tulsa, wins the AAC, do they get in over Iowa State? I don't know. I still think that the committee just doesn't care about Cincinnati.
Every year there is a total chaos scenario.
And it never happens usually.
And it never happens. This year's total chaos scenario is Ohio State gets left out because of not enough games. Notre Dame, and again, there's no criteria to meet, but the committee might just leave them out because they didn't see enough. Notre Dame gets killed and they're out, which opens the door to 2 teams.
Or they beat Clemson. That happens too. And then Clemson's out.
And then Clemson's out with 2 losses. So either way.
One of those 2.
Either way, one of those 2 scenarios opens 2 doors. And I don't know at that point, I don't know, because Florida A&M, Iowa State, group of 5, who gets those 2 spots? So
interesting. But
again,
look,
we're talking
we didn't
about
think
this all,
Northwestern.
and it's going to be, we're talking about this, and it's all going to be Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Ohio State in some order.
Probably. All right, but Joe, before we get into best bets and trivia, college hoops, we got number 1 versus number 2 this week, Gonzaga and Baylor. We've had some great games the past couple of days. Gonzaga, West Virginia, Baylor, Illinois, Duke, Michigan State, Kentucky, Kansas. I'm excited for this game. We talked with Quentin Mayo last week. We think Gonzaga, this might be Mark Few's most talented team. Jalen Suggs did get hurt, but he came back yesterday, which was good to see. But, man, Baylor, I mean, their defense was great last year, but you watch them against Illinois last night. And Illinois is one of the most physical teams. I mean, they play in the Big Ten. Brad Underwood is just a tough, gritty coach. And they were just bullying them on defense. So quick, athletic. It's going to be fun because I think Gonzaga is the best offensive team in the country. Baylor's the best defensive team. It's strength on strength, and we're going to see which one prevails. This day and age in basketball and in college basketball, you'd think offense would, but maybe Baylor can show, make some of the old guys proud.
Don't sleep on Baylor's offense, though. Don't sleep on Baylor's offense.
They can score.
Maceo Teague showed a nice left hand yesterday. All of their guys, there's one after another. Vital can guard any position, and he can play well down low. I'm not going to pronounce the man's name. I'm sorry. I'm not going to try it. But number 23, who lit it up last night, he's a really good big man for them. Butler is a star player of the year candidate. Flagler came on last night. John Rothstein tweeted out, buy some stock now.
Buy some stock.
So they're loaded. They are loaded. And I said it last night. I tweeted it out. I've seen every top 10 team so far except for Wisconsin. And what I know of Wisconsin from past years, I think is enough to make a judgment. I don't think that barring injury, I don't think that either Baylor or Gonzaga will fall below 3rd or 4th all year long. Most likely, they probably pass 1 and 2 back and forth, depending on the week, depending how impressive their wins are. But I don't think either team falls below 3 or 4 the whole season, the whole year.
Yeah, they're pretty damn good. I'm looking at that kid's name again just to see it, and I'm not going to pronounce. I mean, Joe, I don't know if kids in a spelling bee could spell that. That's a tough one. That's a good name. But yeah, that's going to be a fun game on Saturday. It was one of those. I was watching college football, and there was a commercial that came on, and I'm like, "Ooh, number 1 versus number 2 next week. Don't mind if I do." So that'll be fun to see what happens. All right,
Absolutely.
Joe.
And look, the rest of college basketball so far. Yeah, the rest of college basketball so far, like it's been meh. Like I'm happy it's back, but nothing has really jumped off the page at me. But until this week, and I'm
1 versus 2 will catch your eye.
All the time. I'm going to try it just for one. I think it's Chamwa Chachua. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's not
I had to give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Fair enough. All right, Joe, we're both 29 and 33 in trivia. We both had 3 and 2 weeks last week. What are you thinking for number 5? Who are you going with?
For number 5, I don't really love this, but I don't hate it. I feel dirty picking this team, but I've seen how bad the other team is, and I see some glimmer of hope when this team, because their defense is so good and because they got the doors blown off of them Sunday.
Oh, the Bears.
I don't know why I like this, but I like the Bears minus 2.5 at home against the Lions. I think it's just I feel dirty picking it. That's why I'm making it number 5, but the Bears lost to the Lions to open the season on the road. One of those rivalries where you can see a split. It's 2.5. The Bears defense could possibly shut out that Lions offense. And I mean, the Bears offense can't be any worse than it's been. I don't think.
Pretty bad.
You're going to give them something. They might win this game 9-6, but what does 9-6 mean? It means they cover 2.5, PJ. So I don't love it. I like the spot.
I can honestly say that you will be the only person with interest on this game. I don't even think people in Chicago or Detroit will be tuned in to watch this one.
Absolutely.
My number 5, we just talked about it, college football. I think it's an outright upset, but +7, Auburn over Texas A&M. Auburn, I saw a stat yesterday this week that blew my mind. Gus Malzahn against Auburn, against Alabama, LSU, and Georgia on the road, 0-12. Not good coach in big games on the road.
Great.
But at home, Auburn's excellent. And getting a touchdown, you better believe I'm on it. Texas A&M just didn't look good last week against LSU. LSU couldn't score, and their offense didn't look great either. The defense was good, but LSU is not a good team. Bama's favored by 30 against them this week. So I think Auburn at home, they know this is a huge game. This is what they get up for. Gus is looking for a big win to get into the offseason. And this time of the year, there are upsets, it seems like, once a week in the top 10. You saw Northwestern last week. I think this is your top 10 upset this week. I think Auburn +7, Texas A&M.
I agree with you. I'm not picking it, but I agree with you. One where I think there's a chance that our number 4 pick this week is the same, depending on how you ranked it. It's definitely going to be in your top 5. I know it is. I'm taking the Patriots on the road against the Chargers in a pick'em. We were texting about this. You're giving me Bill Belichick against Anthony Lynn in a pick'em. And Bill Belichick has done his typical thing where he's been talking up Justin Herbert all week, like he always does for a rookie quarterback, and then he just slams the door on them when they play. It's a pick 'em. I don't know if it's your number 4. It's probably somewhere in your top 5, but it's my number 4.
It's in my top 5. It's not my number 4. And you might be surprised because I was talking about how this team might miss the playoffs, but I actually like them this week. Cleveland +5.5 against Tennessee. Joe, I can see it now. The headline going into this matchup is, wow, the Browns are 8-3. Like, they're having a nice year. Tennessee 8-3. We expected them to be good. But Cleveland, I think, could pull this upset. And everybody's like, whoa, the Browns 9-3. Holy crap, they're really doing well. Everybody's on Tennessee right now. Tennessee is just not a good home team. They win at home, but it's close. They're a much better road team. 5.5, give me Cleveland with that running game. Keep the ball away from that Tennessee offense. I think the Browns keep it close. I think they actually win the game outright, but take the Browns +5.5.
That's not a bad pick. I actually consider the Titans -5.5. I think the Titans is the side for that game. I'm not gonna pick it, but I had that consideration. I wanted to go to college for this next one, but the line for BYU Coastal isn't out yet. So
it is -10.
It is -10 BYU.
Mm-hmm.
Done deal. give me Coastal Carolina +10. I was looking at it and I couldn't find it.
There you go.
For what we were talking about earlier, I don't know that Coastal Carolina outright wins it, but I don't think they lose by double digits. I think I like Coastal +10. There, thank you. That's what I was looking at from number 3, but I couldn't find the line, so I figured it wasn't out yet. Give me Coastal +10.
My number 3, Indianapolis -3.5 against Houston. Look, Houston, I just think is getting a lot more respect than they deserve. They've won 3 out of their last 4. They've beaten Jacksonville. They've beaten Detroit. They've beaten New England. All right, it's not like they're beating any great teams. Indianapolis coming off that embarrassing home loss. They got to win. They got to keep pace in the playoff picture. The hook scares me. I liked it a lot better at 3. It's moved up to 3.5, but I still like it. Take the Colts on the road -3.5.
All right, PJ, what did I say last week about NFC East teams? I said if you give me any game where it's less than a touchdown, I'm taking whoever the NFC East team is playing. It's not less than a touchdown in this game, but I'm taking them anyway because it's close enough. The Packers -8.5 against the Eagles. We just saw what the Packers did on Saturday night to the Bears. And the criticism of the Packers this year has been that they haven't done it against the great teams, but they've blown the doors off the bad teams. And the Eagles are a bad team. This game probably ends somewhere in the realm of 31-14-ish. So I like the Packers -8.5.
My number 2, I like the Rams this week, -3 against Arizona. I thought they'd lose last week, but I think they bounced back this week. To me, Arizona is one of the most overrated teams in football. I mean, you look at their great wins this season. They were against Seattle in a game they really had no business of winning. They did win it, but again, it wasn't convincing. They didn't blow me away. And then the other good win against a great team was Buffalo on the Hail Murray. So 2 wins that easily couldn't have been. The Rams, I just think they bounce back. Sean McVay is great in his career against the Rams and the Seahawks. He struggles against Shanahan and the Niners, but against Arizona and Seattle, he is very, very good. -3, the money is on both sides. People are like Arizona as the home dog. I like the Rams on the road -3 against the Cardinals.
There's a lot of games that I considered this week. And after seeing how it went last week, I'm going back to college for number 1. Did you see what Jarrett Patterson did for Buffalo last week?
7 touchdowns.
He had
like
8 touchdowns.
8 touchdowns.
He had 408 touchdowns. And that was incredible. Buffalo has gone over, I believe, in every single game this year. I might have missed one, but I'm pretty sure they've gone over in all of them. Maction this year has been going over at a ridiculous rate. And that total for Buffalo at Ohio is 58. And Buffalo probably scores with Patterson the way they're playing. Buffalo probably scores at least 42 on their own. So in a Maction game, you're telling me that the home team only needs to score 3 touchdowns and lose 42-21 for me to hit my over? I like the Buffalo, Ohio. Is that math correct? Wait a minute. 42, 21, 63. Yeah, there we go. So I think I thought the total in that game was going to be higher than it is, which is what scares me. But this season, Buffalo's games, all right, they scored 49, 42, 42, 70. Those are their 4 games this year. The lowest they've scored is 42. So all I need is 3 touchdowns from the home team in a MAC game, and Ohio is only an 11-point dog. I see Buffalo as a team that's scoring at least 42. If 11 is the number, you're telling me that they're thinking that Ohio gets to about 30. I like over 58 in this game a lot.
I like where your head's at. I took Bama. I had the same thing, my same process last week. Bama, Auburn. Bama would get into 40. I just needed 3 touchdowns out of Auburn. They couldn't even give me that.
The difference is that's the SEC and a rivalry game. This is Maction, where crazy things happen and points are scored at will. And guys have 400-yard, 8-touchdown games. So I like the 58 in that game over.
Joe, you said it would be on my board, and you were absolutely correct. It's number 1. New England, pick them against the Chargers. It's Belichick versus Anthony Lynn. I mean, what more do you need? The Chargers have 3 wins this year. The Jets at home, the Jags at home, and then against Burrow and the Bengals week 1 when they won in overtime. And Randy Bullock missed that kick. So I think I'll take New England here. They beat Arizona last week. They beat Baltimore in the monsoon. They've had some nice wins. Again, Belichick against a rookie quarterback, as talented as Justin Herbert has been, as good as he's looked, he hasn't faced the master yet. And he's going up against Belichick, who's going to just absolutely frustrate him to death. New England's going to run the ball, play good defense. I can't believe the game's a pick 'em. Vegas just has so much respect for the Chargers because of how good of an offensive team they are. But at the end of the day, the game will be close. And would you take Bill Belichick or would you take Anthony Lynn? New England, pick 'em, number 1 pick of the week.
All right.
All right, Joe. Trivia, just like in Best Bets, we are tied up at 10 and
tied across the board.
We just really are just the same person.
My question. You've given me. That's a scary thought. You've given me my question first the last 2 weeks.
You go ahead and give it to me. Yep, go ahead.
I've been going historic mostly. Yep. You've been going mostly current.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd switch it up to kind of get with what you were doing a little bit. I wanted to give you a current question. See how much you're paying attention. All right.
I don't think I like this. Go ahead.
I want you to give me the top 5 rushing leaders in the NFL right now.
Oh, boy. All right.
Time starts now.
Derrick Henry's a lock.
Okay.
Alvin Cook is a lock.
Yes, sir.
Alvin Kamara.
Alvin Kamara's not in there.
What?
Alvin Kamara, as a matter of fact, is not even top 15.
He's on my fantasy team. He's just a touchdown machine.
Touchdown machine, and he does it catching the ball, too.
Yeah, touchdown machine. Wow.
The 1 strike. 20 seconds gone.
All right, let's see. Who are the backs killing it in fantasy this year? There's no McCaffrey. There's no Saquon. Zeke's been terrible. Carson's been hurt. Mostert's been hurt. The Rams shuffling everybody. You know what?
40 seconds gone.
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray? No.
Ooh.
He's top 10. He's top 10. I like where your head's at.
Yeah. I like that one.
Sorry, he's 11th. He's just on the outside.
You know, James Robinson might be in the top 5. Aaron Jones, too. I'll go with both those guys, Aaron Jones and James Robinson.
So James Robinson gets you your 3rd correct name, but Aaron Jones gets you your 3rd strike, and that is it, BJ.
James Robinson's a beast. I love that.
The top 5. You had the last name correct. Wrong first name. Ronald Jones for the Bucks.
Really?
Is number 4.
After they ran it 4 times against New Orleans?
He has that 99-yard touchdown. That's actually, if not for the 99-yard touchdown, he would right now be number 7. So Then you got Josh Jacobs at number 5, and then knocking on the door 6 and 7, Kenyon Drake, Nick Chubb, and all the way down at, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17th for Alvin Kamara. Because again, he does it catching the ball too.
It's receiving.
He may never in his career get 1,000-yard rushing season because he does it so many ways.
So true. Man, yeah, that was a good one. James Robinson, I felt good about that one. Aaron Jones, I thought had it, but
I thought that you would get everybody but Ronald Jones. I thought you would get Josh Jacobs. I thought Rojo was the one that would trip you up, and Jacobs, in a way it did. You just didn't,
Jacobs, I should have got. All right, Joe, your question. I'm keeping it current, like you said. That's what I'm doing. We're going to college football. We talked about BYU, Coastal Carolina. Those are 2 of the 9 unbeaten teams right now in college football in the top 25 of the playoff rankings.
Okay.
So there are 7 other unbeaten college football teams. You can give me 6 of the 7 teams, then I will give it to you.
All right. 6 of the 7 unbeaten teams besides those 2.
Correct. Go ahead.
Cincy.
Cincy is 1.
Bama.
They are 2.
And Notre Dame.
They are 3.
And Ohio State.
That's 4.
Okay. It's always an easy few with you, and then it's the last 2 that get difficult. Nobody else is unbeaten in the Big Ten now that Northwestern lost. Nobody else is unbeaten in the SEC. After Bama, the next teams are Georgia, Texas A&M, Florida all have 1 or 2 losses.
1 minute left.
Miami's got a loss. Liberty got a loss. Gosh, there's 2 more. There's more than 2. There's 3 more unbeaten teams.
45 seconds left.
It's got to be Pac-12 because they haven't played a lot of games. USC hasn't lost.
Yes, 1 more.
All right. USC hasn't lost, and who else out there hasn't lost?
30 seconds.
Has Colorado lost?
They have 1 strike.
They have. Oh, I'm going to get tripped on the last one.
20 seconds.
It's got to be another Pac-12 team. I just don't know which. Arizona's lost. Oregon has lost.
Ooh, can you beat the buzzer? 10 seconds.
UCLA.
Nope. 2 strikes. 5 seconds. 4, 3.
Done. Who we got?
1. Washington Huskies.
They are undefeated.
Yes,
they had that crazy comeback the other night. They did. I was watching that comeback. They were down 24 and won it. I was watching that comeback. Yes. I'm disappointed in myself, actually. Yeah.
And the other group of 5 team that's undefeated. So you got Cincinnati, BYU, Coastal Carolina, and number 21 is the Marshall Thundering Herd. Undefeated.
Oh, good for Marshall.
Didn't even
realize.
Yeah.
Marshall. There you go.
So
right, that was a good one.
Well done. Once you went to the Pac-12, I'm like, oh, he might get it. That's why I gave you 6, because I knew you get the easy 4. I figured you get one of the 2 Pac-12 teams, and then I was like, can he get Washington?
You got to a good number. I should have. I would have not gotten Marshall. I didn't realize they were undefeated. We are Go Thundering Herd, but I should have gotten Washington for no other reason than the fact that I was watching that game and I saw them some way, somehow win that game and remain undefeated. Shame on me.
There you go.
Colorado must have lost this week then, right? Because they were
did.
undefeated.
Yeah, Colorado lost to UCLA. No, they beat UCLA week 1. I think it was Oregon State, maybe, or Washington State, somebody like that.
PJ.
Yeah,
PJ. Colorado's unbeaten. They're must have missed a team and going through it. Colorado's 3-0.
They're not in the top 25.
Oh, top 25. That's what my issue was. That's right.
So they are undefeated.
Okay.
So they are undefeated, not in the top 25.
There it is. There was the caveat. I was like, I know they're unbeaten, but I didn't realize they were not ranked. Okay. There you go.
Well done.
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks again to Sherree Burruss for joining us. Great to talk to her. That should be a fun game in Houston and Indy. Let's go Colts -3.5.
I got Houston actually outright in that game. We'll see.
Do you?
I do. I think they're playing great football right now. I think the loss of Fuller and Roby hurts them, but I think the Colts are in a little bit of I don't know. That's just a bad funk around that Titans game that might linger one more week.
Doesn't hurt the Texans as much as it hurts PJ's fantasy team. That's what Fuller really hurts.
That's what really matters.
Joe, when I saw that news, I'm like, are you kidding me? I just got Mostert back and Carson back, and I'm like, oh, my team's going to be nice in the playoffs.
Are you still in the double elimination survivor pool? You're still alive in that?
I am still alive. Joe,
what's your entry name? I can't figure it out.
Ridiculous.
Oh, okay.
Ridiculous. I'm number like 13. This week I'm taking Minnesota because
me too.
They had their letdown against Dallas. They're not having their letdown against the Jags.
Had their letdown against Dallas.
Next week, Joe. Next week's schedule so hard.
Not for me.
There's like it's brutal. I don't know.
Not for me. I'm in that one. I'm one of the 4 remaining unbeaten ones.
Who do you have left?
I got a bunch
Seattle?
of teams left. I have Seattle left. I have Seattle home to the Jets next week. I'm not in any issue here. But this week I am also on the Vikings like you. So
yeah. Oh man.
I agree. They had their letdown against Dallas. They squeaked one out by the skin of their teeth against Carolina. Great comeback victory. Jags at home. I think it's a good W.
I think everybody's going to be on Minnesota this week and Vegas. Those will be
Vegas.
Those will be the 2 picks.
I'm rooting for the. I'm in a weird spot here.
I'm telling you, the Jets might keep that thing close.
I don't want the Jets to win, but also like the other couple teams that are undefeated, like me in that pool, might have them. So we'll see at 1:00 when the teams that the opponents picked are revealed. If I'm sitting there with the Vikings and the other 3 teams that haven't had a single elimination yet have Vegas, I'm going to be between rooting for some money and for Trevor Lawrence because the Jets could ruin it if they get the W. So I don't know.
Next week is just brutal. If you don't have Seattle left, it's very.
I've got Seattle. That's
well,
I've been saving them all the way because I looking ahead. I knew this week was tough. And I knew week 14 would be tough, and I knew that would be a cupcake. And
because I still have Pittsburgh left, I'm saving them for Cincinnati, not next week, but the following. And then this week I got Minnesota, but next week is the one I'm like, oh boy.
It gets tough beyond my quote unquote top teams that I still have because there's not much left. I have Seattle. I'm using them in week 14. I intend to use Tennessee home against Detroit in week 15. I don't want to be counting my chickens before they're hatched right here. I intend to use Tennessee home to Detroit in week 15. I'm using Minnesota, like I said, this week against the Jags at home. 16 and 17, if it gets that far, at that point is when the cupboard becomes pretty bare. I could use Cleveland at the Jets. I could use Houston home to Cincy. That's week 16, not much else. And then week 17, God, I mean, if the Pats need the game home against the Jets, that's where I probably go. That's really it. I really hope it doesn't get to week 17 because there's not much.
No, I looked at week 17 too. That'll be a tough week as well.
Yeah, but I'm set. Knock on wood, this wooden table that I'm having the laptop on. I set myself up very nice for these next 3 weeks. I got a double-digit favorite this week in Minnesota home against the Jags. The Jets are going to certainly be double-digit dogs on the road against the Seahawks next week. And then I've got Tennessee at home against Detroit the following week, going into week 17. So I'm set up okay. Hopefully, upsets happen every week in the NFL. You never know. But based on odds and based on spreads, I am in a good spot.
You like your chances. That's all that matters. Well, for Joe Malfa, I'm PJ Glasser. Thanks again to Sherree Burruss. We hope you enjoyed episode 27. We'll see you next week for episode 28.